Good morning, everyone. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. Hope your Thursday is starting off well. You're looking live at the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, and if you look closely enough, you may see this camera bounce a little bit. It's quite blustery out there today. Let's get you a look at your weather conditions first today to start off. Right now it's 55 degrees. The dew point is 36. Winds are out of the west at 21 miles per hour. That's the sustained winds. We're looking at gusts into the 30s across the area right now and almost 40 miles per hour in Georgetown, Delaware, Atlantic City, Lancaster, Mount Pocono, Wrightstown, all in the upper 30s. Even Philadelphia, 37 miles per hour for wind gusts right now. Let's get you a complete look at weather to start us off. Oops. There is your look at Ultimate Doppler. Here's a quick look at the Foxcast for today. Our average high this time of year is 66, so we are going to be below that in the entire viewing area. As I was showing you Ultimate Doppler, that looks to be a little bit of the pink stuff out west in central Pennsylvania. So first time we're seeing that on radar in this view. Let's get you a look at the current temperatures right now. 50s across much of the area. Only 41 in Mount Pocono right now. You see some of that blue on the map, indicating temperatures in the 40s in central Pennsylvania. Across the northeast, 50s along the coast, but 40s further to the west and north. A lot of blue on the map today. Miami hanging in there at 85. But green creeping into the southeast now, 50s and 60s, even a 49 in Atlanta, 59 in Houston, 52 in El Paso, 50s out west. Salt Lake City and Vegas and Phoenix a little bit warmer, but we do have some 40s across the Great Lakes area. Minneapolis 39. For temperature change, we are feeling about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than we were at the same time yesterday. Here again are our sustained wind speeds and those gusts into the upper 30s in many places. That's making it feel cooler than it is outside. Actually feels a degree below freezing in Mount Pocono right now, just 31 degrees. Visibility isn't bad because there are not too much cloud cover and not too much fog. Let's get you a look at the future cast here. See that rain system yesterday brought parts of our area 2 inches of rain or more. I know at our house we got 1.8 inches of rain, I believe, just a little under 2 inches. So plenty of rain moved through. Let's take a look at the longer term future cast. We have some clearing today into tomorrow, some cloud cover midday Friday. Saturday looks pretty clear. Sunday, clouds thick in, might get a little bit of rain across southern portions of the viewing area, and then that moves out. In terms of the temperature pattern right now, we are going to be mostly below average, with the exception of Sunday and Monday here. Monday right around average. Heading into a period of below average temperatures. And here is your forecast from the Fox 29 Weather Authority. Currently today it's going to be a blustery day, 58, 7 on our forecast by the numbers. Sunny and breezy on Friday, tomorrow, 60 for a high, overnight low 47. That looks like an 8 on our forecast by the numbers, so not a bad day as the winds die down. Saturday looks sunny and nice at 63. Sunday, sun to clouds, 65. Monday, partly sunny, 71. Tuesday, a shower chance, 66. Wednesday, another shower chance, 61. Make sure to download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app. Get the latest conditions wherever you are. You'll get notifications for severe weather alerts, like wind advisory, wind warnings, if we have some today. As we monitor, this is, as our Sue Serio said on the forecast this morning, this is a day where you might have to go chasing down your trash cans if it's trash day. It is quite blustery out there, so download the app. Always have the latest forecast at your fingertips. It's available in the Google Play and Apple iTunes stores. Looking live outside our studios at 4th and Market Streets. Let's take a quick look at conditions around the region. These are our Fox 29 weather cameras. You may see some of these cameras bouncing in the wind as we showed you earlier on the Parkway. Here are those cameras. You can see that camera in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware bouncing pretty good, and the flags flapping all over the place. All the shots. Winds are really gusting down there in Wildwood. Look at that. And back to Old City here. All right, let's get you to some breaking news this morning. You're looking live at one of the offices for Maryland Representative, U.S. Representative Elijah Cummings, who passed away overnight. A tweet from his office says the representative passed away earlier this morning at Johns Hopkins Hospital from complications from long-standing health problems. Cummings was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, which is involved in the impeachment inquiry of President Trump. He has served Maryland's 7th District since 1996, which includes the city of Baltimore. Cummings was 68 years old. Some of his colleagues in the House of Representatives are paying tribute to him. Let's listen in and hear if that is still happening. I did also record a member of the House earlier, so we'll circle back to that when we can. Let's listen in.
By and thankful for his commitment to public service. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of and passing of my friend Elijah Cummings. When I first came to Congress a few terms ago, I teamed up with Mr. Cummings to introduce a bill honoring the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman. When I approached Mr. Cummings about this bill, he didn't ask me what party I was in. He didn't ask me what my political philosophies were. And he didn't care about partisanship. What he cared about is the fact we had a common interest, that being Harriet Tubman. And I always appreciated that. In the years that passed since then, we continue to co-sponsor that bill and continue to push it. And I'm sad to hear of his passing. And I offer my prayers to his wife and family. And I pray that he's united with God right now. And I think going forward, we can all be happy and proud of the legacy he set for us here in Congress. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Budd, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to discuss second chances. Across our nation, 1 in 3 adults has an arrest or conviction that makes it difficult to find a job. Take Kevin Miller, for example, who was incarcerated for 8 months in 1992 after a...
We'll get you some more about the late Congressman Cummings in a little bit. In the meantime, let's move on to some other news from this morning. The Trump presidency has reached 1,000 days, and it's a busy time with the Ukraine situation has prompted an impeachment inquiry, the unfolding Turkish incursion into Syria, and a high-drama meeting at the White House yesterday. Joining Good Day Philadelphia this morning to talk about it all was Fox News Channel's chief political anchor, Bret Baier. Here is that conversation from Good Day this morning.
11.
Well, I think they've landed now. We ought to check on that. Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, they have arrived in Turkey to negotiate a ceasefire in Syria. This is a daunting task. This comes a day after a clash between President Trump and congressional leaders at a meeting about the battle between Turkey and Kurdish forces. Democratic leaders say the president went into a quote-unquote nasty diatribe and had a meltdown when they ask about his decision to pull U.S. troops from the region.
Looks like our report here has frozen up, so let's move on to another one. We'll circle back to this one. One of the best companies to work for is hiring thousands for the holiday season. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco joined us this morning with this report.
It's that time of year when companies hire for the holiday season, so if you need a job, listen to Tracy. Who's hiring?
American Eagle Outfitters, they are looking for 10,000 part-time seasonal workers, according to Glassdoor, which is a job resource site. They say that American Eagle Outfitters is one of the top 3 places to work during the holiday season. Perhaps it's because they do offer, I think it's a 40% off discount for their employees. But this is good news. However, that number of 10,000 employees, that is down from what they hired last year. Last year, they did hire about 22,000. Perhaps it is the recently forecast current quarter profit that came in below analyst estimates, so perhaps they're just cutting back there. Nonetheless, they do have a hiring event on October 20th, which is Sunday from 11 to 4 p.m. at stores. So take a look at that if you're looking for a part-time seasonal job.
Okay, so we got to show up Sunday at the store is the best way
Yep.
to get the job done.
Yep.
Okay.
Walk in and get a job.
Well, thanks for that tip. Well, I think a lot of people will be there on Sunday for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Tracy, we'll see you again tomorrow. Well.
All right, let's try that conversation with Brett Baer again and see if we can get this to play out for you. I seem to be having a little bit of trouble, a little bit of technical difficulty here. Let's listen into some of the conversations on the House floor, and we'll get this worked out for you and be right back in a little bit.
Deal will help increase those investments in our local communities, creating opportunities and jobs for many Hoosiers. In Congress, we must build upon this successful trade agreement President Trump has struck with the American people. We can and we must pass the USMCA, which will increase opportunities for workers and farmers across this country. I urge my colleagues to continue to support these trade deals. Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate the Winchester News-Gazette on celebrating their 175th year as a newspaper. Previously called the Winchester Patriot, Hoosiers in Randolph County have relied on the News-Gazette for local news since 1844. Local press is essential to a thriving community and is a prime example of the First Amendment in action. Congratulations to the Winchester News-Gazette on serving Hoosiers for 175 years. I rise to recognize the Muncie-Delaware County Chamber of Commerce for celebrating their 125th anniversary. The Chamber has been an integral part of the greater Muncie community since 1894. Their strategy for engaging large, medium, and small businesses has been the driving factor behind the thriving economy in the city of Muncie and Delaware County. Congratulations to the Muncie-Delaware County Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize Rolls-Royce for the tremendous work they are doing in my Hoosier state. I recently visited both the Rolls-Royce Indianapolis headquarters and the Rolls-Royce Liberty Works plant, which produces more Rolls-Royce products than anywhere else in the world. Rolls-Royce employs 4,000 Hoosiers and in recent years invested hundreds of millions of dollars to create world-class engines and products that are on the cutting edge of our national defense. I want to thank Rolls-Royce for the great work they are doing for Indiana and the United States. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are many things that we come to this floor to do. In the midst of our duties, we stand in this well as armor and advocates for democracy. There are moments of joy, there are moments of high debate, but I come this morning partly for a moment of sadness. I'm looking at my iPhone at a picture of myself and the late Congressman Elijah Cummings so many years ago. It just tells the story of the breadth and depth of his life when he invited members of Congress to come to his district to challenge against the scourge of HIV and to stand against the proliferation of addiction. He was always standing in the gap for his constituents, his beloved Baltimore, his beloved family. And he always considered himself as someone who would find a cure for the ailments of society. That's why this morning we have heard some of his words, "Come on, people, we're better than this," or the wonderment of his words that really came from his strong spiritual connection. I want everybody to know that he was able to say all of this and remain that steady figure in the eye of the storm because he was a man of faith who had no shame in his love of God and the teachings of his parents, who he reminded us all the time as they rest in peace themselves of that they were sharecroppers. And look at him now. He ascended to greatness, chairman of the Oversight Committee. His focus was not only on this recent impeachment inquiry, he looked at all aspects of wrongness that afflicted the American people, certainly one of which included this high prescription drugs that are causing people to either lose their lives or not be able to take care of themselves. But he was also a man of justice and wanted criminal justice reform and wanted to work to ensure that our police persons, law enforcement, could have the kind of training and the kind of understanding of culturally diverse communities. He served us in many ways. He certainly was an icon amongst the Congressional Black Caucus, but he was not ours alone. He belonged to this Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and he belonged to the nation. But Baltimore, I cannot leave you out. He belonged to the beloved Baltimore and also the heritage of his parents. So I stand here today to give comfort to those who are mourning, to try to ease the pain that I am experiencing, and to be able to call upon a nation that has the beauty of allowing us to pray to any of the gods that we worship or the God that we worship in any faith that we may have, that we call upon that faith today to be reminded of a giant like Elijah Cummings. And I conclude with just a moment to be able to say that I pray for the families in Syria, the fleeing Kurds. I pray that this unmistakable disaster that has occurred, that we can put it right side up with the Congress working to secure a no-fly zone, to have a ceasefire in northern Syria, to be able to stop the bloodletting of women and children and the fleeing that is going on. As my good friend would want, we want to fix government. And in fixing government, we want to protect the American people. And this threat of national security that has now been leased with the escaping of ISIS supporters and family members, along with ISIS persons, we must come together to find a way to bring about peace. In his name, I'm grateful to have this opportunity to honor him and to also speak to peace. That is what I believe his life legacy will be, that he always wanted the best for America, and he would always say to all of us, no matter what walk of life we were in, what background we came from, what diverse part of America we represented, he would always say, we are better than this. And his faith in a higher power was without question, and that will be the strength that I have today, the faith in a higher power. May God bless him. May he rest and have a soul that is rested. May God bless his family. And may God bless all those who loved him and his constituents. And may God bless the United States of America.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
Well, I mean, I always shoot things forward. So.
That thing must get great reception. Can space with that? Okay, thank you. Bye. Yeah.
Thank you for bearing with us through some technical difficulties there. Paul Ruppel from Fox 29 News Now with you again. You were watching a tribute to the late Congressman Elijah Cummings on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Soon, at 10:45, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to take the podium inside the House for her weekly news conference. I believe there's also a specific item on the agenda. She and other top House Democrats are holding this presser ahead of the introduction of House Democrats' H.R. 3 legislation to negotiate lower drug prices for all Americans. I understand Air Force One is also going to be departing Joint Base Andrews soon, so I'm not sure if we'll have some sound from the President, as he often speaks outside the White House before heading out. Let's see if we can get that for you. In the meantime, we had some trouble with this clip earlier, but let's see if we can get you to some of the local news today. We'll start with national news. I mentioned earlier that Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier was on our air this morning. Let's see if we can bring you this package from this morning.
11. Well, I think they've landed now. We ought to check on that. Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, they have arrived in Turkey to negotiate a ceasefire in Syria. This is a daunting task. This comes a day after a clash between President Trump and congressional leaders at a meeting about the battle between Turkey and Kurdish forces. Democratic leaders say the president went into a quote-unquote nasty diatribe and had a meltdown when they asked about his decision to pull U.S. troops from the region.
He couldn't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. But 2-1, the Republicans voted to oppose what he was doing. in Syria. He just couldn't handle it, so he kind of engaged in a meltdown, and we were trying to get the answer. What is your clear plan that this resolution asked for how we fight ISIS? It was very sad. It was very sad.
So, Brett Baer is with us from Fox News Channel. I guess that's the talk of the town.
It is. So many people wish they were a fly on the wall for that meeting, because what happened?
For sure.
Yeah. Good morning, Mike and Alex.
Hi.
Yeah, that was a big meeting yesterday at the White House. Democrats describe it one way. Not surprisingly, the White House describes it a different way. But everything that we got from both sides was that it did get heated at times, and the Democrats did walk out. One of the quotes was that the president called the speaker a third-rate politician, and the speaker said, "Why does everything always end up back at Vladimir Putin for you?" So, you can imagine the back and forth that may have developed there. The key thing here is that the president is getting a lot of pressure from Republicans and Democrats about the decision in Syria, and this trip by Vice President Pence and Secretary of State Pompeo is crucial to try to get this fighting to stop on the ground.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham yesterday said, it's the biggest mistake of the Trump presidency. I guess we do have a soundbite of that if you want to hear what he said. Here it is.
And I say, why are we protecting Syria's land? Assad's not a friend of ours. Why are we protecting their land? And Syria also...
He's making the biggest mistake of his presidency by assuming the Kurds are better off today than they were yesterday. That is just unbelievable. I can imagine if Obama said that, what Republicans would be saying now. So I'm going to say it with Trump. That is just unfair, dangerous, and quite frankly, it's dishonorable for us to abandon the Kurds.
Brett, another big headline was that letter from President Trump to the president of Turkey. Tell us more about that.
Well, that letter was kind of blunt. It was basically, don't screw this up. I'll make a deal with the head general of the Kurds. It was very plain in its delivery and delivered to the Turkish president, Erdogan. The Turks are saying this morning that Erdogan essentially threw the letter in the garbage. So you can see that Erdogan is, trying to have the upper hand here, and may very well.
But it's one of the lines everyone's talking about. It will look upon you forever as a devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool.
Wow, what a day then for our Secretary of State and Vice President Pence to walk into negotiations after that letter.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough sledding with the Turks. They're in 9 days now into this operation.
Yeah.
We don't have a total number of killed on the ground, but it's significant.
Hey, you know what? Before we let you go, I want to buy your new book, especially for my brother who served in the military. Where have I been? I had no idea that in 1943 there was a secret meeting between Winston Churchill, FDR, and Joseph Stalin to figure out what we're going to do about Hitler. What a book!
This book is called 3 Days at the Brink: FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. And basically, it is this meeting in Tehran in November of 1943, where these three leaders meet for the first time, the biggest powers in the world, as World War II is hanging in the balance. It could have gone the other way towards the Nazis. They plan D-Day at this meeting, and it's some amazing back and forth that I had a lot of fun digging up and writing.
Well, it's so good. They planned D-Day over a 3-day meeting in Persia. What?
And what's interesting is you also have an edition of this for young readers, too?
Yeah, it comes out the same day. It all drops on Tuesday. And so the young readers edition is for like 9 to 13, 14-year-old. And so my son and 2 sons, 9 and 12, are going to be able to read the same book that Mom is reading.
That's cool.
I hope she's reading at least.
That's good. Or you can have a family discussion after, like a book club.
Exactly. Book report.
Brett, congratulations on that book.
Thank you very much.
Hope it does really well.
Thanks to Brett Baer for joining us this morning. And as you see, media is starting to assemble for a press conference that Nancy Pelosi will be holding with top Democrats. We'll get you to that as soon as possible once it begins. We also have a live shot of Air Force One on the tarmac at Joint Air Base Andrews. If we get some video of the president speaking, we'll get you that as well. In the meantime, let's get you to some other news. This is a conversation from Good Day Philadelphia this morning. Let's tell you a little bit about this. A Philly teacher's brutal stabbing has experts at odds. How her parents are still fighting for answers 8 years after her death. It's a case you won't want to miss. Here is the conversation from Good Day Philadelphia this morning.
7:32 now. It is a case with so many unanswered questions. On January 26, 2011, Ellen Greenberg, a 27-year-old school teacher, was discovered in her Manioc apartment with 20 stab wounds covering her body.
Her death was initially ruled a homicide, but then reversed to suicide. And now her parents are suing to have that ruling changed.
There were no signs of foul play, no defensive wounds, no forced entry into the apartment, and neighbors heard no signs of a disturbance. Ellen's friends say they noticed a change in her demeanor in the months leading up to her death. Whereas she was once bubbly and happy, they say she now seemed filled with anxiety. She also was seeing a psychiatrist who prescribed an anti-anxiety drug and a sleep aid. The listed side effects: suicidal thoughts and behavior. Investigators say they were the only drugs found in Ellen's system when she died. The State Attorney General's office has also conducted an investigation into Ellen's death, the office revealing Ellen's computer turned up searches for suicide methods and painless suicide just weeks before her death. It also cited a text message Ellen sent to her mother in January 2011, alluding to the fact that she was so unhappy. Still, the Greenbergs believe there's more to this story. Refusing to accept the new ruling, they are tirelessly conducting their own investigation. They say they have new evidence that proves the initial homicide ruling is correct.
Ellen's parents are here along with their attorney. Thank you for coming in. Before we move any further along here, tell us more about Ellen. I mean, she seemed to enjoy the teaching job.
She was a natural. Loved children, loved life, she was just very bubbly and alive, and such a pleasure to
What
be
did
around.
she like to do outside the classroom?
Well, she played sports.
Yeah.
As a father, you know, a daughter who plays sports.
You love that.
Yeah.
So she's very active.
Yes.
And I see you are wearing, you said this is her bracelet? You're still wearing her bracelet.
I always try to wear something of hers every day.
So
Keep her close.
this is going to bring all this back again, but I think you understand that it's certainly worth it to you. You've got to go now through all the things that are being said. There's no sign of forced entry. How do you answer that?
Well, the answer is that they never really vetted that out. And as a matter of fact, there is strong, substantial evidence that the inner lock was never engaged. So that's a question that needs to be fully investigated. It is not something that can just be accepted as the authorities did that night.
So you mean when they say it was locked from the inside, you're saying it really wasn't fully locked?
It wasn't locked at the time of the incident is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And we know that from photographs that were taken that night by the medical examiner's office, which show that the inner lock, both bases, actually are still attached. And had the door been broken into through, one or both of those posts would have been, taken away from either the door or the wall.
Another thing people say is that there didn't seem to be signs, this is according to the medical examiner, no signs of defensive wounds, like she wasn't trying to fight someone off. And could someone actually stab themselves 20 times?
Well, you have two questions there, I believe.
Okay.
Question one, I'm not an expert on. We've worked with Tom Brennan, a former state trooper, who's an expert in these things, and he has brought up that topic of that blitz defense, where you don't have a defense because you're so taken off guard.
Overwhelmed.
Right, overwhelmed. The second question was the 20 stab wounds?
Yes.
Doesn't make sense. 20, I think 10 of them were frontal and 10 were in the back. And some of even the angles of those wounds don't make sense either, that you could do that to yourself.
Yeah. Especially in the back. Yeah.
Yes.
And when it comes to the medication that she was taking, and I know they've been mentioning the searches on the computer about suicide, do you think maybe she did those searches or someone else might have, or?
No one knows.
Yeah.
Nobody has really examined the browser history for Ellen's computer. We do know, just preliminarily looking at some of the quote searches, that Ellen would have been in school teaching her elementary class when some of those searches apparently occurred. So how do you explain then where she can be in two places at once? She can't. So again, this just really emphasizes the lack of any type of thorough investigation to really get to what the truth is regarding Ellen.
Well, you've been grappling with this since 2011. What do you think happened?
I think somebody killed my daughter.
And why do you think that?
Because we've mentioned only a couple of things.
Right.
There are other things that we have a preponderance of a whole slew of things, facts, I don't know what you want to call them, opinions, that really refute that this was a suicide.
Okay, now.
Well, there's also the theory that there were two knives that were used.
I don't think that's a theory.
There's a serrated knife and a smooth knife.
I think that's one of the, we have a number of the top forensic pathologists in the state and country who have reviewed this case.
And they're finding?
Homicide.
Homicide.
So why do you think the medical examiner's office changed it? Do you think it's pressure from police, or what could it be?
What we were told years after the fact, Tom Brennan, the investigator, was told that the reason it was changed was simply because the police said the lack of defensive wounds, in their opinion, rendered this a suicide case. And the pathologist said, I'm going to defer to that decision rather than the medical evidence, which indicated homicide.
Now, she was found by her fiance, right? He had to break down the door. What's his involvement at this point?
Well, we really don't know. I mean, we have to see where the truth and the facts take us. There's a real question whether the door was ever broken down. There are witnesses that say that they were not present when they were claimed to be present.
Why would that be in a police report?
Well, that goes to the question as to how thorough was the investigation that night and how much was just taken for granted as being true without being critically looked at to see if in fact it was true. That's what we're asking for. And that's why we're asking for the death certificate to be changed from suicide to, at a minimum, not to be concluded at this time, to allow that full vetting of an investigation to go forward.
Why is that so important to you? Just justice?
I want my daughter's name cleared. Because there's no way that she could have done this to herself. Reasonable people look at these facts and cannot understand how these determinations were made.
We did reach out to the State Attorney General's office. It said it conducted an investigation, received web searches on Ellen's computer and her text messages, and concluded, quote unquote,
that the evidence supports suicide as a manner of death. Accordingly, we have communicated our findings to the family through its representatives and have closed this investigation.
So what?
But with this suit, it could open back up.
Right. What's the next move?
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, the next move is to open the case up, present the evidence before the court that shows that a determination of suicide, it cannot be supported under the governing law, that the death certificate should be changed to either cannot be concluded to something else, and then let's get an independent prosecutor to do the investigation. It should have been done back in 2011.
Medical examiner said that the health department and medical examiner's office, as a rule, do not comment on ongoing litigation. That's why we don't have a definitive statement from them. Well, keep us up to date as this progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back.
Thank you to the family for coming in to speak about that case. Wish some peace and closure in whatever resolution comes, whether the case is reopened or not. Let's get you to some local news while we wait for that news conference by Democrats in Washington, D.C. Happening today, there's a new bill to protect kids from vaping. Philadelphia officials are expected to introduce new legislation to fight against the vaping crisis. Mayor Jim Kenney and the City Health Commissioner are calling for restrictions on sales of flavored e-cigarettes.
These companies have been advertising to children with flavored nicotine, vaping nicotine, and they're trying to get kids addicted. The things that corporations will come up with to destroy people, ruin people, from opioids to stuff like this, is just unconscionable, and it's all about greed and money. So we figure we would allow adults, if they want to hurt themselves, to be able to go into a place where kids can't go and do it, but we want to keep it out of children's hands.
Under the bill, e-cigarettes with more than 20 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine salts, flavorings, or other e-liquids would only be sold in adult-only stores. In Delaware County, a little girl is waking up in critical condition after being hit by a car seconds after getting off her bus in Springfield Township. Police say the accident happened around 3:30 yesterday afternoon on the 400 block of East Woodland Avenue. Our Sabina Kuriakos was out on the story this morning and filed this report for us.
The mother of 7-year-old Jaislyn Yaboa, she talked to us this morning after a harrowing night spent by the bedside of her daughter at CHOP. She tells me it was only in the early hours of this morning that doctors were finally able to stabilize the grade schooler, but they don't know if she's going to be okay. She was hit by a car as she got off the bus at the bus stop just across the street from us yesterday around 3:30 in the afternoon. This is East Woodland Avenue. It's the northwest end of Route 420, and witnesses say that the bus was stopped, the arm was down, and that the driver went through the arm of the school bus when he hit Jaislyn, and that he came to a stop about 40 feet down the road. Jaislyn, again, 7 years old, coming home from Saybold Elementary School, as she has done for the past 2 years. Her older sister, 9 years old, also on the bus with her, saw everything that happened. Again, Jaislyn has been stabilized at CHOP. She is heavily sedated as doctors work to determine the extent of her injuries. We also spoke with a young man who heard the impact of the car hitting Jaislyn. He ran out of his house and he was the first to render aid and begin CPR on Jaislyn. He says that he too was hit by a car on this same road as he walked to school on Monday, 2 days before this happened. Here's Jaislyn's mom talking to us this morning.
She's been stabilized. She's responding to treatment. And for now, we're just praying to God that He will deliver her from all that is going on.
I saw her laying on the ground. I ran out. I was the first person there. She didn't have a pulse. So I got her onto her back. She was laying on her side. And that's when I started CPR until others assisted me.
Unfortunately, you have a mix of a high-speed road and a slow neighborhood, and when people start hitting that barrier, they don't slow down.
It's a blow to all of us, but I mean, we thank our friends, family, our church family. We thank them so much. They've been of immense support to us. They're praying for us.
And Bradley, the 15-year-old, he says that he sees Jaislyn and her sister every summer running their lemonade stand on the sidewalk across the street from where she was hit by that car as she got off of the bus stop. Police right now still investigating why this driver didn't stop when the arm of that school bus came down. This morning, the lieutenant governor weighing in on our report, calling all of this distressing.
Thank you to Sabina for that report. Let's get you to some more local news. Certainly wishing Jaislyn a full recovery, as well as the 15-year-old. What an amazing, unfortunate, sad development that he was hit by a car, and now she has been as well. Glad he was able to be there and help render first aid and get her care. In other news today, the jury will resume deliberating the fate of Michael White. He is charged with involuntary manslaughter in the stabbing death of Sean Skellinger. White's attorney says he acted in self-defense. They claim Skellinger was drunk and on drugs and threatened White at the scene of a traffic dispute last July. Prosecutors say White escalated the conflict by pulling a knife. Let's take you live to a news conference that's now underway in Washington, D.C. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is at the podium and speaking with reporters.
He was a leader of towering character and integrity. He lived the American dream. And his own family's parents were shareholders. He Phi Beta Kappa from Howard, and a chairman of a very important committee in the Congress of the United States. He lived the American dream, and he wanted it for everyone else. He spoke with unsurpassed clarity and moral integrity when he spoke on the floor. I had the just coincidental opportunity to be at breakfast with someone who served with him in the state legislature in Maryland. And he said when Elijah Cummings would stand up in the state legislature, in the House of Delegates, as it's called there, the room would fall silent. Everyone wanted to hear what Elijah has to say. And that is, of course, what was the case in Congress, in his committee, and in the country. He used to always say, our children are our living messengers to a future we will never see. So he wanted to be sure that future was going to be better for them and that they would bring with them our values. In that regard, in terms of a better future, I'm so proud that this morning Richie Neal announced in the markup and the hearing that they were having on H.R. 3, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, that he was suggesting to name the bill for Elijah Cummings. So appropriate, because Elijah was a fighter for lowering the cost of prescription drugs, reaching across the aisle to do so. He always strove to reach across the aisle and treat all of our colleagues with respect, and even had dialogue with the president for a while on this subject. So it would be very appropriate that H.R. 3 would now be the Elijah Cummings low drug cost now legislation, whatever the formal title will be. It's very sad for all of us. We've all lost a friend. I'm devastated by the loss. Conveyed our condolences of our caucus to Maya, his dear wife, this morning, and she said what we all knew. He just fought to the end. But that's the way he was, not only on his personal health, but what he believed in the Congress of the United States. So we're back now after our district work period. We're members all over the country. We're part of a drumbeat for H.R. 3. For our For the People agenda, our first, number one, was to lower the cost of prescription drugs. They presented H.R. 3, heard feedback, and we are benefiting it with two markups this week, one in energy and commerce, the other in education and labor. The hearing in Ways and Means this week, and then the markup next week. And then we'll be well on our way to reconciling different versions and bringing something to the floor. I think it's really important to note that since the break, toward the end of the break, we did get this Congressional Budget Office's CBO score of $345 billion in savings just in the Medicare Part D part of the bill. Other savings, $158 billion in savings for family households, $46 billion in rebates and the rest. So the savings are considerable, and the Congress will decide how there will be, some of it will be reinvested into innovation at the National Institutes of Health, perhaps in community health centers across the country, and expanded benefits for Medicare, visual, hearing, dental. Perhaps that's up to the committees. We'll hear back from them, and just trying to lower the cost to the community. Bobby Scott's committee is marking up this bill, but as many of you know, earlier in the week we announced his College Affordability Act, and we're very proud of the response from the members on that, and that will be making college less expensive. We're still at work on the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement and making progress every day on our path to yes. But we're not there yet. As soon as we can get the assurances from the administration and from everyone involved that there will be enforceability of some of the of the provisions of the legislation, that it will really be an improvement on the current NAFTA, then we'll be able to proceed. But I'm optimistic about that. I'm still hoping that, and this came up across, although we were focused on for the people agenda, lower health care costs, build in bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America, cleaner government. That was our agenda in the campaign. One of our priorities in this session has been to reduce the risk of gun violence in our country. It's now been 232 days since we sent our bipartisan legislation to the Senate. Every day about 100 people die from gun violence, nearly half of them children up to the age of teenagers. My colleague, Frederica Wilson, when I was in Florida during the break, gave me this bracelet made from a bullet and the orange color of gun violence prevention. So we're not going away until we get legislation passed to reduce gun violence in our country. As you know, this has been a week of some issues that relate to our foreign engagement. I was very proud of the work on the floor of Congress to associate ourselves with the democratic aspirations of the young people of Hong Kong. I've been working with now 3 generations of Hong Kong democratic leaders just for the Chinese regime to obey the basic law under which Hong Kong was to exist, one country, 2 systems, living under the basic law, which made certain guarantees that are not being lived up to. But Congress came through this week, spoke very clearly in a bipartisan way about our support for that. Now we are eager that we have bipartisan support in the Senate too, so hopefully that will come up soon there. As you know, yesterday on the floor, 354 members voted in a bipartisan way to oppose the president's dangerous decision in regard to Syria. By 2-1, Republicans voted to oppose the president's actions. There were only 60 votes in favor of the legislation. The legislation would have called for Turkey to use restraint, for us to help our friends, to be a trustworthy ally to Kurds, especially in humanitarian needs now that they're being bombed by the Turks or being attacked by the Turks. It also calls for the president to show a clear plan for how Americans will be protected from ISIS, which has been further unleashed. Green light to the Turks, actions taken that are renege on our handshake with the Kurds, and now we need to have a plan to deal with what happens with ISIS. As you know, that was the subject of conversation yesterday at the White House. I also pointed out to the president I had concerns that the L road seemed to lead to Putin. The Russians have been trying to get a foothold in the Middle East for a very long time unsuccessfully, and now the president has given them an opportunity with the Kurds reaching out to them for support in Syria. They have the Russians were the beneficiaries of any withholding of assistance or encouragement to the Ukraine. Again, Putin benefits. The Russians benefited, Putin did. The president placed some doubt about our commitment to NATO right from the start of his administration. All roads lead to Putin. Then the president said, well, the reason I'm taking the troops out of Syria is because I promised in the campaign to bring the troops home. My question to him was, is Saudi Arabia home? Is Saudi Arabia home? Why are our troops going to Saudi Arabia if you promised to bring them home? He said, well, the Saudi Arabians are paying for it. Really? We're putting our troops in harm's way for Saudi Arabia because they're paying? It just didn't add up. But what it did do was cause a meltdown on the part of the president because he was unhappy with those questions. And it was so unfortunate because we were invited to the meeting. The president started off the meeting by saying, I don't know who asked for this meeting. I didn't. And we're like, well, let's proceed anyway. And we had hoped that our real mission was to find out what the plan was. Leader Schumer was very forceful in that discussion with the president on what is the plan. My plan is to protect America, so that's a goal, that's not a plan. What is the plan for us to be protected from ISIS now that some of them have been unleashed in Syria because of the green light that the president gave the Turks and reneging on our trustworthiness as an ally with the Kurds who had been our friends. So for these and other reasons, that was most unfortunate. On a separate front of all of that, I'm very proud of the work of Chairman Adam Schiff. Again, this is so solemn. None of us came to Congress to impeach a president. That's not what we come here to do. And any such actions are to be taken very solemnly, seriously, in my view, prayerfully. It isn't a unifying thing for the country to have to go through this, but we do have to honor our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, our democracy, and our republic, as Benjamin Franklin said, a republic, if we can keep it. Well, it is our fight to keep it. As I've said to you before, the times have found us to do just that. So I'm very proud of the work that Adam Schiff is doing, and this isn't about politics or partisanship. It's about patriotism for our country, and I value the way he is conducting this with equal time on all sides for the questioning that are there. You've heard from him. We were here together when he presented how he was proceeding. He also sent a letter to members yesterday, which is in the public domain. I call it to your attention in case you have some questions about the professionalism and the fairness with which these hearings are being held. Any questions? Yeah, that's so sad.
On the impeachment inquiry, how important is it to you not to let this bleed over into an election?
Well, I think as I've really made, thanks, Nancy, for the question, and thank you for your condolences, Elijah. I keep saying to people, impeachment is about the truth and the Constitution of the United States. Any other issues that you have disapproving of the way the president has dealt with Syria, whatever the subject is, reluctance, the cowardice to do something about gun violence, the cruelty of not wanting to help our dreamers and transgendered people, the denial about climate crisis that we face. The list goes on. That's about the election. It has nothing to do with what is happening in terms of our honor our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution and the facts that might support. And we don't know where this path will take us, but could take us down a further path. But these two are completely separate.
But at what point might you say, let's let the voters decide?
Who said that?
No, I'm saying, at what point might you say, let's just let
No,
the voters decide?
the voters are not going to decide whether we honor our oath of office. They already decided that in the last election. Yes,
Republican leader Mitch McConnell seems to think that an impeachment trial in the Senate could wrap up before the end of the year.
I have no idea.
Does that seem unrealistic to you?
I have no idea. The path, the timeline will depend on the truth line, and that's what we're looking for. Chad?
On the Syria policy, this is sort of a two-part question. Number one, do you think that we've gotten into this question about what should be the right policy in Syria, because there has not been AUMF since 2001 and 2002. And the second part, and this dovetails a little bit with what Nancy was asking, would there be a scenario where, as you said yesterday, it was dangerous what the president had done in regard to Syria, that this could bleed over into the impeachment issue because it's such a grave problem?
No. Let me answer your second question first. When I became Speaker the first time, no, maybe not, but there were those who were here who, who knew that people, hundreds of thousands of people were in the street asking me to impeach President Bush because of the war in Iraq and because of the misrepresentation that was made at the time as to why we should be going into Iraq. That's a policy matter. That isn't, in my view, an impeachment matter. And I said if they had any case to make, they could make it, but I was not going down that path. Again, what could be worse than the war in Iraq and the misrepresentations that were made to the American people? And as you know, says I was the senior Democrat on intelligence. I had the Adam Schiff job, one he had before becoming chairman in the majority, but in the minority I was a member of the Gang of Four. I saw all the intelligence. I knew that there was no intelligence to support the threat that the administration was putting forth, and I said at the time the intelligence does not support the threat. Senator Graham of Florida was actually the chairman, because they had the majority at the time, the Democrats, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and he came to the same conclusion. We both voted no on the war. So I think that the war in Iraq was one of the worst mistakes in our country. I did not think it was about impeachment. It's about policy, and that's a different debate. Impeachment is about the law, not being above the law, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, about honoring our oath. Honoring our oath of office.
Thank you very much. On the USMCA, you just said a short time ago, you're making progress every day. Leader McConnell, however, has charged in recent days, as has the president, that Speaker Pelosi is still blocking the USMCA because Democrats' impeachment obsession is blocking urgent work for American families. So much of the work and negotiation here, Speaker Pelosi, kind of happening behind closed doors. Are there ways for Democrats to better convey the good faith progress to prevent the president and Republican leaders from charging that you are trying to block this trade?
Anybody else want to put all the Republican talking points on the table, because we could just get rid of them all at once?
Well, I'm not trying to
Let me just respond to the second. Let me respond to your question rather than their misrepresentations. Okay. First and foremost, might be interesting to you, but a negotiation of this nature, and the administration would support this. Not only support it, it's what they want. These negotiations are not in the public domain. The exchange of proposals and this or that is, I can't even share them with the members. In fact, I have a hard time getting some of it myself from time to time, and I do. It has Pelosi written across it, so should it go astray, or I try to copy it to show anybody, that wouldn't happen. So these are confidential backs and forth, and I can honestly say that I think every day we are becoming closer. They were meeting yesterday with the trade representative, with some of our task force. I think they're going to meet again later today, perhaps at one more time, and then we should just see. The issue is, do we have enforcement? So the people who are saying that don't know what they're talking about, or have a different agenda that they want to present. But we feel very good about being on a path to yes. We're not there yet because we don't have the enforceability assurance that we need to have. While we have some good things in the bill, it's only a list of good things unless they can be enforced.
Sure, and as far as environmental standards continue to be the Democrats.
But the three things, the overarching is enforceability of the whole thing. And then the three concerns, as we have discussed before, are the environmental concerns. And as a Californian, I can tell you firsthand that needs to be addressed. But all the border states could probably tell you that as well, vis-a-vis the southern border. But the agreement has to be respectful of global agreements that are there on the environment. In other words, this is about what is realistic that we can get done. In terms of the prescription drug, that's a very big issue in our caucus, and we hope that we can resolve that. And then the third are the workers' rights and the rest. We don't see a situation where diminishing the prospects for workers in Mexico is any good for our hemisphere. So we want that to be very fair in that regard. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and again, condolences on Chairman Cummings. There was a picture yesterday that was taken at the White House with you standing up at the table speaking to the president. Can you tell us a little bit about that picture and what was being said at that time?
I think I was excusing myself from the room, but I think I told you what the thought that I conveyed to the president in the meeting about the 354-60 vote in the House disapproving of his Syria actions. A. B. My concerns about all roads leading to Putin, and if the president is saying, I said during the campaign I was going to take the troops home, then is home Saudi Arabia. That would be about the essence of either sitting down or standing up. But my conversation was with the president. But most important part of the meeting was, what is the plan? And that was part of my report on the legislation on the floor. What is the plan for fighting ISIS now that we have reneged on our handshake with the Kurds to do that fighting for us there? And that was strongly presented by Senator Schumer. So one or the other of those things are what was being said. I think it would be interesting, you tell me, if we could have a recording of what goes on in those offices, because they come out and say, oh, this happened and that happened. You're like, we must have been at two different meetings because that didn't happen. But nonetheless, then you get these kind of questions and the rest that have no fidelity to fact, but it's true that that's what they said. It is true that that's what they said. So I don't know what at that moment I was probably saying all roads lead to Putin. Yes, ma'am. Last question.
Speaker, as you pointed out, Chairman Schiff sent out the letter yesterday describing the process that he's going through in his committee right now, saying there could be public testimony ahead.
That's right.
I'm curious, how will you determine and when in the future rules for this process, including whether the president will be allowed to have counsel or representation down the road as part of impeachment?
Well, you know what? This is a matter for the committee, and the rules are, we have rules of the House that govern all of this. But I think it's really important to reiterate the following. The process that the House is going through right now would be the equivalent of a special counsel in case of whatever the name was at the time for the Clinton or Jaworski and Sareka, way back when, before you were all born, on the Nixon. So they had prosecutors who were doing the investigation, and they were not doing that in the public domain. And so this is the part where we gather evidence. And as I've said to the president over and over, if you have I said this to him on the phone the day that we made our announcement about proceeding with the inquiry, that we've asked for your taxes. If you have nothing to hide, show us your tax. We've asked for Mazer, your accounting. If you have nothing to hide, show us that. We've asked for this, that, and the other thing. If you have nothing to hide, we're giving you opportunity to show that you have nothing to hide. But what you're doing is just going further up into the courts. And last Friday, we had 5 court decisions in our favor, another one this week. So in terms of the law, this is about the Congress, the courts, and the Constitution. And in terms of the Congress, our responsibility is to fairly get the information according to the rules. And Mr. Schiff is running that show for us now. Thank you all very much.
Speaker, should Americans be concerned about the president's mental stability?
You've been watching House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's news conference there, where she was providing updates on the meeting that she had yesterday at the White House, as well as other topics, other legislation that Democrats are working on, etc. We have a live look at Air Force One right now, which is about the taxiing to a takeoff. The president is en route to Fort Worth, Texas, where he'll be he's participating in a roundtable with supporters and delivering remarks during a joint fundraising committee luncheon. He's also participating in a ribbon cutting at a workshop, a Louis Vuitton workshop. So, President traveling as Congress continues to look into, continues its work now back from a recess. Lots of congressional hearings today. Despite the passing of Elijah Cummings, let's show you some video of him and talk a little bit more about his passing. As mentioned earlier, this was stunning and sad news out of Washington, D.C. this morning that Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings had passed away. A tweet from his office said the representative passed away earlier in the morning at Johns Hopkins Hospital from complications due to long-standing health problems. Cummings was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, which is involved in the impeachment inquiry of President Trump. He has served Maryland's 7th District since 1996, which includes Baltimore. Elijah Cummings was 68 years old. Now, the president earlier this year took Cummings to task over some criticism that he'd made and had some words about the city of Baltimore to share, but on the occasion of Elijah Cummings' passing, had this to say via Twitter: "My warmest condolences to the family and many friends of Congressman Elijah Cummings. I got to see firsthand the strength, passion, and wisdom of this highly respected political leader. His work and voice on so many fronts will be very hard, if not impossible, to replace." There again, if you look closely, you'll be able to see the flags flying at half-staff there at the U.S. Capitol. All right, a few more stories to get you to from follow-ups and other news. The first is a deadly crash that occurred in Delaware County. This was, is heavy rain to blame for this deadly rollover crash that killed 3 people and injured 8 others? It happened on Route 1 in New Garden Township around 2:30 yesterday afternoon. Southbound lanes were shut down for some 5 hours. Several of the victims left the hospital last night. One of them told us that all 11 people were temporary workers from Philadelphia traveling to the Hearst potato chip factory in Chester County. He says he's thankful to be alive, but doesn't know what happened to other friends who were sent to 2 other hospitals.
I feel sad. I feel totally sad for them. I didn't see my other neighbor if they still around here.
Hearst released a statement yesterday that said, you can see it there on the screen. It's our understanding at this time that we have few details at this point that this vehicle may have contained employees of a temp service we used. We have no other information at this time. They were not full-time employees of Hearst, and that is all we know at this point. I can tell you that we actually got an updated statement from Hearst this morning. It says, Hearst confirms that the passengers of the van accident on Route 1 in New Garden Township yesterday were employees of a temporary staffing service that Hearst contracts with. Our Hearst family and company is deeply saddened by this tragedy. It is truly a shocking and saddening event felt by us all. We offer our most sincere sympathy to the individuals and families involved. All right, a couple more stories here. Also in Delaware County, attorneys representing 7 people living in Chester Township are calling for the removal of an officer and want State Attorney General Josh Shapiro to investigate loitering arrests of African Americans outside their homes. For the second time in a week, an officer is accused of targeting black residents living in Chester Township, that is. Attorneys for 33-year-old Brandon Alvin say he was arrested for resisting arrest and disorderly conduct across from his house while talking to his cousin after officers approached him for loitering. The criminal complaint alleges the father of 4 pulled away from police. His attorneys say he did nothing wrong.
We're calling for the immediate removal of Officer Pascal Storrs from the Chester Township Police Department.
Mr. Alvin did not commit a crime that night. He was not doing anything wrong when he was approached by Officer Storrs.
Those were Thomas Fitzpatrick and Kevin Mincy, both attorneys for Mr. Alvin. Officer Pasquale Storsey ordered our Jeff Cole off his property when we asked for comment. and the chief of police directed us to the department's lawyer, but he did not immediately return our call for comment. Investigators in New Jersey have shut down the carnival ride that took the life of a 10-year-old girl in Deerfield Township last weekend. Haley McMullen died after she was thrown from the Extreme. Now, that's the name of the ride. Now, state officials say that ride and others like it are shut down statewide until they figure out what happened. New information about the refinery explosion that occurred in Philadelphia a couple months back. A pipe was to blame. It was small, old, and corroded and burst. Investigators say the pipe got so thin it burst, and that released propane and thousands of pounds of hydrofluoric acid into the air. 2 minutes later, that huge chemical vapor cloud ignited and sparked 3 explosions. Let's see here in this animation. That was a 38,000-pound tank that was thrown 2,100 feet across the Schuylkill River. Another weighing 23,000 pounds was thrown 800 feet. Here's the sound from the Chemical Safety Board.
The CSB can confirm that while the thickness of parts of this pipe was periodically measured to monitor corrosion rates, the thickness of the elbow that failed had not been monitored for corrosion.
After the fire, the plant shut down, taking more than 1,000 jobs with it. The Chemical Safety Board says it's investigating. A final report with recommendations to prevent this from happening again is expected early next year. Tallamenson Township Police in Montgomery County are looking for the brazen thieves who are stealing people's personal information to buy stuff, send it to their homes, and then take it from their doorsteps. So far, there have been 2 incidents in Tallamenson Township. Earlier this month, someone reported getting packages at their home and later found out their personal information had been compromised and used to make the purchase. Then on Tuesday, a similar thing happened to someone else. Police say that resident also remembers seeing an older model white van in his cul-de-sac the day of the delivery. And yesterday, a home security camera captured a van fitting that description back in the cul-de-sac.
I haven't heard anything like that before.
A lot of different ways people try to scam nowadays, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
I've seen people with like the Ring cameras and stuff, and like people run up and grab packages, but like I think they're like stealing packages mostly. I've never seen someone like order one somewhere. Like I don't even know how you would do that.
Basically trying to find a new way to scam people easily, so I don't know. I mean, I would just suggest that people get those new cameras they can put on the doors.
Police haven't determined whether the 2 incidents are related. And in Center City, Philadelphia, stores are cracking down on young kids. There are signs up all over restricting people under 18 during certain hours. This comes after multiple incidents of kids causing chaos in the city, like this scene Monday night on the Roosevelt Boulevard. At Five Guys, you must be 18 to enter during the week between 11 and 5. At DTLR, no kids are allowed before 2:30, and at Liberty Place, after 1 p.m., anyone under 18 must be with an adult.
Yeah, they believe that since there's rumbles or fights going on in the Liberty Place, that they take it out on everybody else, and we don't think that's fair because we just want to get food.
I stay away from the crowd. I was younger, I used to think that was cool, but I was like, nah, because you end up at a place you don't want to be at.
That was our Hank Flynn reporting there. All right, I think that's going to do it for us today. I want to thank you for joining us on Fox 29 News Now. Have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. We're with you weekdays after Good Day Philadelphia. Have a great rest of your day.